Now, the church that you see there to the right, that is called the Hollow Church. The construction was completed in 1884. Now, that was the first Christian missionary church here in Hawaii. The missionaries landed here in Hawaii in 1820 over in Kailua Kona. Behind this church, you have all the mission homes where they did and did all their work. But this church is made out of 4,000 coral blocks, each block weighing about 500 pounds. The exterior and the interior parts of this church is made of coral blocks. Yeah, that's Hawaiian time. On the right, this is the Honolulu Holly, our mayor's office. So we have his office there in this back. Now we're getting back on the E-288 highway, working our way back to Pearl Harbor. It should take us about 20-25 minutes to get there. Like I said, it takes us about 20-25 minutes to get there. Along the way, I'm going to share with you some information concerning the attack on Pearl Harbor. This information that I'm sharing with you is information that I studied, learned, and I've obtained, and I hold nothing against the countries that were involved. The war is over. We won the war, and we are at peace with those countries. Now, with that being said, December 7th, 1941, a date that will live in infamy, for a deliberately attack by the Empire of Japan. We were at peace with that country, yet they chose to attack the United States of America. I come to Congress asking Congress to declare war upon that country. Now, those are some of the words that was addressed to Congress on December 8th, the Monday after the attack on Pearl Harbor by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, declaring war upon Japan. Now, the question is asked, why? Why were we attacked? Why did we lose so many lives? 2,404 lives were lost that morning there at Pearl Harbor. But before we can answer any of those questions, we have to understand what was actually happening back then in Asia and Europe. You see, a lot believe World War II in the Pacific started in 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. But you see, that wasn't the case. World War II in the Pacific actually started in 1931 when Japan invaded the northern province of China called Manchuria. Now the two dominant countries back then was Great Britain and US. And those two countries didn't pay really much attention to Japan's aggression upon Manchuria. But then again in 1937, Japan invaded mainland China once again. Now looking at Japan, Japan is a very beautiful country, very rich in culture, very populated. But what they didn't have was the natural resources to sustain that population, and it caused them to go on and take it from other countries, which they chose China. Now, mainland China was divided up into ports. The Chinese government called these ports sapphires of influence and has given some of these ports to Western countries. For example, Great Britain had gotten Hong Kong, the US had gotten Shanghai, Portugal had gotten Macau. Now, these Western countries did not want Japan coming in and controlling what they wanted to control themselves. Now, Hirohito was the emperor of Japan at the time. He was a godlike figure to his people. All his people looked up to him, but he didn't hold the power. You see, the power rested in the hands of their military that was under the control of General Hideyoshi. Now, the U.S. had told Japan they had to pull out of China. If they did not pull out of China, three things would happen. One, we would freeze all their assets. Second, we would stop selling them oil. And third, we would declare war upon them. Now, General Hideyoshi did not like being told what to do, especially by the Americans. So what he did, he ordered his Admiral Isadoko Yamamoto, to plan an attack on the U.S. Now, Admiral Yamamoto, he lived in the U.S. for 5 years, attended Harvard for 2.5 years, and he knew the ways and the lives of the Americans, and he knew that Japan would not be able to overpower the U.S. Now, he went back to his superiors and he told his superiors this. Yes, at the time we were weak, military speaking. We weren't building bombs, airplanes, or battleships. At the time, what we were building was millions and millions of automobiles. But he also warned them that if Japan declared war upon the U.S., not only would they be wasting an enemy giant from World War I, but it would take less than 15 months for the U.S. to turn from a domestic-based economy to a military-based economy. And that is exactly what had happened. Japan declared war upon the U.S. Our men went to war, and our women went to work in the factories to help support and sustain the United States of America, making us the nation that we are today. Now, Admiral Yamamoto, he was against the war, but he was ordered to plan an attack, and he planned a brilliant attack. You see, he knew he wouldn't be able to win this war using battleships. With a battleship, you have to get within 20 miles of your enemy before you can start firing, or else they'll be firing on you at the same time. So what he did, he planned an aerial attack, knowing he could park his aircraft carrier 300 miles away and coming by aircraft undetected, and that's exactly what they did. You see, they left Japan on November 26th with 6 aircraft carriers, numerous battleships, submarines, and mini-subs, and over 350 aircraft. They took a northern route to avoid all the major shipping lanes. For 12 days they traveled in complete silence so they wouldn't be detected. On December 7th, 1941, at 5:30 a.m., they assembled 260 miles north of the North Shore of Oahu. At 6:10 a.m., they launched their first wave of airplanes, 183 planes. 45 minutes later, they launched their second wave of airplanes, 161 planes. A radar station over on the North Shore on Mount Okala detected 50 planes coming in 100 miles north of the North Shore. They called it into Fort Shafter. Fort Shafter's response was, "Don't worry about it." They weren't being sarcastic. You see, at the time, that radar station out there was new and the technician was just learning it. So what Fort Shafter believed they saw was the B-17 that's coming in from California, would fuel up here in Pearl Harbor and continue on to the Philippines because Japan started invading the Philippines as well. But what they actually spotted was 50 planes from the second wave of airplanes coming in. Those 50 planes came over the West Oahu Mountains, the mountains right in front of us that we're going to see soon. They came to a pass called Koi Pass. As they came to the pass, they came upon Schofield Army Barracks and headed towards Pearl Harbor. As they worked their way through Pearl Harbor, they came across the Willard Army Air Force Station. And it was there on the tarmac that we had our planes parked, 120 planes parked, waited to equip, nose to tail, unloaded of all its ammunition. And That was per the order of our Pacific Fleet Commander, Zero Admiral Kimball Short. They ordered the plane to be parked like that because they were concerned about the Japanese Americans that lived here. They were worried about theft and sabotage, even though they knew that Japan was flying out back in Hawaii. The attack was that airfield as well as other airfields and continued on to Pearl Harbor. The first torpedo to be dropped at Pearl Harbor was at 7:55 a.m., striking the USS Utah. She capsized some aboard her, 54 sailors, and one civilian are still entombed upon her here in the waters of Pearl Harbor on the west side of Fort Island. The second vessel to get hit was the USS Oklahoma. 9 people later, she capsized some. 434 lives were lost. A special armor-piercing bomb landed on the front magazine of the USS Arizona, penetrating 4 decks, igniting over 1 million pounds of gunpowder, exploding, tossing the Arizona 10 feet out of the water, landing and sinking in a matter of 10 minutes. Aboard the USS Arizona, 26 sets of brothers, a father and a son, Thomas and William Free. Now, these young men, these boys, they enlisted to become military men, able men to travel to see the world. And you had a handful that enlisted to help support their families, because a lot of families were still suffering from the 1930 depression. These young men went and enlisted so they can work and send money home to help support their families. But on that fateful morning, their lives and their families were shattered. 1,177 lives were lost on the USS Arizona. Today she sits in the waters of Pearl Harbor and took upon her 1,107 Marines and sailors. Now sitting at the stern of the USS Arizona is the USS Missouri battleship. The significance of the two battleships together is the beginning and ending of World War II here in the Pacific. December 7th, 1941, the sinking of the USS Arizona was the beginning of World War II here in the Pacific. September 2nd, 1945, the signing of the surrender by the Japanese aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay was the ending of World War II here in the Pacific. Today, the USS Missouri sits there at the stern of the USS Arizona, watching over her fallen sister. Today, you folks will be heading out there to the Arizona Memorial and experiencing that memorial out there. But while we're there, me as a tour guide, we are not allowed to give tours there at the visitor center. But what they do have, so you can really get the full effect of the tour, they do have these audio headsets that are self-guided tours. And I do recommend getting them because they share a lot of information of Pearl Harbor during the attack. There's also 2 museums there, the attack museum, the before attack and after attack museum. Highly recommend going in there. And with the headsets, you can really hear a lot and learn a lot of the museum. There's a lot of artifacts and stories there at the museum. You can use this headset to go out to the memorial and get talk about the memorial as well as the Missouri battleship. Now those headsets do come in different languages as well. So you can pick your language that you're comfortable with and they can adjust it for you there. But when we get there, we're going to stay together. Those of you who have your bags, please take out what you need from it and bring it up here to the front. Or you can leave it right there on your seat and it's fine. But take out your valuables, credit cards, cash, ID, passports, whatever you feel you may need, and just leave your bag right there on the chair. The bus will be gone, locked up while we're gone. Now looking over to your right, the white structure that you see out there, that is the Arizona Memorial. The white pylon that you see, that is where all our battleships were all anchored during the day of the attack. Now, heading out to Fort Island, Arizona. One casualty